Hello and welcome to another episode of ADHD Heathen History, where I tell you about whatever part of history I'm currently hyperfixated on. Growing up as a Christian, I was definitely taught that Jesus was born in Judea. However, I was not taught anything about the political climate into which he was born, and of course how those politics would impact his life. For most of my life, I was under the impression that Judea was under direct Roman rule for a long time before Jesus came along. Not quite. Most modern scholars would date Jesus' birth to sometime between 7 and 4 BCE. This means that Jesus was born under Emperor Augustus and King Herod. King Herod was descended from Edomites, but his grandfather had converted to Judaism, which made Herod a practicing Jew. King Herod was a client king, which meant that he answered directly to Emperor Augustus, but the people of Judea answered to him. Another important thing to note is that while Herod was alive, he was responsible for paying taxes to the emperor. It didn't matter how they were collected from the people. Our buddy Herod here dies in 4 CE, but his son Archelaus takes the throne. Unfortunately for Archelaus, he was deposed 2 years later in 6 CE because of his wild unpopularity with the Jewish people. After Archelaus is deposed, Judea is annexed to Syria and comes under the rule of proconsul Quirinius. Good old Emperor Augustus tells Quirinius to send somebody to Judea to liquidate Archelaus' estate and to census the Jews for tax purposes. So, Procurator Coponius packs his bag and goes off to Judea. And we learn this from Josephus. And it's at this point in 6 CE that Judea becomes a senatorial province and is now under direct Roman rule. As I mentioned earlier, so long as Herod or one of his heirs were on the throne, taxes were paid to Herod, and then Herod was responsible for paying them to Augustus. But now, taxes would be both collected and paid directly to the Romans. And Josephus says that it's actually Quirinius' census that sets off the first stage of rebellion against Rome, led by Judas of Galilee, who was the founder of the Zealot movement. And this would prompt the later rebellion in 66 that would end with the destruction of the temple in 70. Here's where it gets fun. Both Matthew 2 and Luke 1 place the birth of Jesus during the reign of Herod the Great. As a reminder, Herod the Great died in the month of March during the year 4 BCE. Matthew 2:19 through 22 indicates that Jesus' birth would have taken place a few years before Herod's death. Joseph and Mary take Jesus off to Egypt, only to return after Herod's death during the reign of Archelaus. This would mean that they would return and settle in Galilee at some point between 4 and 6 CE. However, in Luke 2:1 through 2, it's the census that sent Mary and Joseph to Bethlehem. But this presents us with two problems. The first and most glaring issue is that this account would place the birth of Jesus about a decade after Herod's death. The census took place not only after Herod's death, but after his son had reigned for 2 years and was deposed. Second, Quirinius was only commissioned to census Judea, not the Galilee. But we can talk more about that next time.